Okay, good morning, everyone. We will get started now with our Career Zone webinar. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Blair Dorr, and I am here from Headed To. Headed To is the company that powers the California Career Zone. We manage all the technology and the distribution of the site, and all the changes that we'll go through today are thanks in large measure to the team on our side that have put a lot of work into what you'll see. So thank you to them. Thank you to my colleague, Catherine DeRozier, who's on this call and will be watching the Q&A. Let's save our questions for the end, but you can feel free to enter questions in the Q&A of the webinar as we go along, and we'll get to them at the end. That'll be the plan. Okay, I want to make sure I've got the screen pulled up right now that you should all be able to see, which is our California Career Zone homepage. And from that homepage, you'll notice a few sort of basic changes, which is that we've been a little more explicit below the main entry points into the California Career Zone that we want you and your students to create a free account. And that is definitely an important aspect of the Career Zone. A big reason why is because when you create an account, the site is going to be able to remember what you've done. If you've done interest profiler or other self-assessments, it's going to remember those results. If you've explored various careers and sectors, it's going to remember those and be able to make intelligent suggestions of what to look at next. So a free account in the site is a great place to start, but not just for your students, for you as well. Past webinars have focused heavily on the student features of the California Career Zone. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to focus more on the educator features of the site. Make sure you're all aware of what you can do, how to bring students under management, how to create a lesson and assign it, and some of the other features that are there as well. We'll also spend some time today talking about the upgrade options for the Career Zone. As many of you probably already know, the California Career Zone is a state-sponsored site. It's been around for roughly 15 years now, sponsored by the California Department of Education. We added features in the last several years that have helped localize the site and give you more power at a local level, whether it's at a district or school level, to do various things that you might not have been able to do on the state site. So when you're thinking about, well, what's the free stuff versus what's the stuff I'd have to upgrade for, probably the easiest way to think of it is if it can be done across the whole state, then it's probably free. If it's something that would be need to be customized for you and your school, or you as an individual, or for your students individually, then that's something that's going to be part of the upgrade. But we'll get into that during this call. All right, so let's start with some of the changes that you'll have noticed this year as we headed into 2019, 2020, and hopefully some of the improvements that you'll see in the system. I'm going to sign in to first a free educator account. Now, if you don't already have a free educator account, it's probably a good idea to sign up for one. The way you'll do that actually is you'll sign into your regular Career Zone account. If when you registered, you designated yourself as a teacher, you will see an option on the right-hand side of this page where for me it says an educator code. For here, it'll tell you that you can request an educator account. So just be aware that if you don't already have an educator account and you registered as a teacher or counselor in the system, then you'll have that option to sign up for a free educator account, and you should definitely go ahead and do so. All right, so right off the bat, you'll see some changes. This is our Career Hub page. Our Career Hub page has changed a little bit. So now that we have, obviously it's still personalized, and we've now pulled in the main avenues into the site right from the Career Hub page, including discover possibilities, explore industry sectors, and a direct link to your summary report, which is going to show you all the activity you've done in the system. As a teacher, the thing you'll see that's pretty exciting if you have a free educator account is a management toolbar at the very top. This is going to show you your educator code, and I'll explain what that is in a second. It's going to tell you how many students you have under management and whether you've reached the threshold of 50, at which point that's when you might want to begin to consider an upgrade, and we'll talk about that more. It gives you direct links to your users, your lessons, and then some other personal information as well if you want to go in and change that. Another really exciting thing to point out to educators around the state today is that California has supported the launch of a free professional development module in the site for our free educator account holders. So, really nice that the California Department of Education has gotten behind. Helping all of you get even more skilled in using the site with your students. And the way you'll access it is when the first time you log into your free educator account, you'll see a square here in your stuff. It says professional development. I click on that and it's going to pull in the professional development modules, everything from a pre-training survey to an entire module on the student experience in the site, to a module on the educator account experience in the site, and finishing with an evaluation. Now, the other reason this is kind of cool is because it's sort of showing you what assigning or receiving a lesson is like in the system. We built this using our upgraded and new lesson plan system, and that's something we're going to show off today. And you'll get firsthand knowledge of what that looks like when you go through this educator course. So again, this part is all free. You're going in, you're just getting skilled and expert in the site, and you'll be able to access those modules just so long as you have a free educator account. And again, if you don't have that educator account, you'll want to request one by clicking a button that you'll see in this blue box. So what is this educator code? Many of you may know this already, but the educator code is how your students will link their accounts to your account. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to share this code with your students. There's a couple ways that you can do that. If I click on the code itself, it's going to actually give me a mini tutorial on how to do it. If we were in a classroom, I might just ask all the students to log into their account of the California Career Zone. If they haven't created one already, I'd ask them to create one. And then when they log in, they're going to see a blue box on the right-hand side that gives them the option to enter an educator's code. And that's where they would enter your educator's code. Once they've done that, they're going to click submit and they're going to be linked up to your educator account. And that's going to be a really important and great first step for you in being able to manage all of your students' activity inside of the system. So it's really pretty cut and dried. The other option you can do with the educator code is you can send a link. We call it a magic link to all the students that you want to bring under management. And they can open up that link and agree to have you underneath their management. So that's how the educator code works. And it's pretty handy and obvious in terms of where it is, both in the management toolbar and also down here in this blue box with that on the right-hand side. Some other things you'll see as you scroll down, the educator's corner is going to contain tutorials and other information for you on how to use the site. So that can be helpful. And then also you'll see if you got any messages, you'll receive them here. Your students will also have a message box on the right-hand side where they'll be able to receive messages. As we scroll down, this is where you would see recently viewed occupations and profiles in the system, as well as recommendations. But this is the first time I'm logging into this particular demo account, so there's nothing there just yet. Okay, so some more just basic refreshers on the site, and another little bit of a change going into this year. Discover Possibilities is where you're going to find all of the self-assessments in the system. And any of you wondering, what's the best way to use the Career Zone, or what's the best way to introduce the Career Zone to my students? What we always say here is this is the best place to start. The entire idea of the California Career Zone and all of the systems that Headed 2 develops around the country is that we do want our students to start with self-assessment. We don't want students just thinking, well, I want to be this occupation or that occupation, maybe because it makes a lot of money or has a lot of prestige. What we encourage students to do is understand yourself first, understand where your interests lie, what's important to you about work, what are your budget needs, for example, and then from there, pick a series of occupations, etc. So if they're going into self-assessments and they're wondering where to start, here you go. The top two choices are two of our most popular self-assessments in the system: Make Money Choices and the Interest Profiler. Make Money Choices is an introduction to financial literacy. And within this tool, you see that if you go to budget how much money you'll need, you'll access our lifestyle budget tool. With that tool, you're going to go through, or the student's going to go through kind of a a mini TurboTax version of building a budget with individual options here for, what kind of housing are they going to live in, utilities, food, entertainment, clothes. As they go through that budget, they're going to build up kind of what is the monthly cost that they're going to have, and then in turn, what sort of salary they're going to need to meet those requirements. This can be a really fun exercise to do with your students, in large part because some students may have very ambitious lifestyle goals, from the standpoint of wanting home ownership and wanting to own a luxury car and wanting to eat out all the time and shop all the time and things like that. And this is just a really nice way to show them, well, that adds up. So if you're going to do that, then you're going to need to have a career to kind of match it from the standpoint of the income side of the coin. So a really great conversation starter and a really nice place to start in the career zone. The other option is to start with the interest profiler. That is a really powerful self-assessment. We've computerized and brought the ONET self-assessments into this system in a more user-friendly way. So if you go to start a new interest profiler, you'll see there's two options, a 30 question and a 60 question. I think both are really good. 30 questions can easily be done within a class period. 60 is maybe a little harder to fit within a class period. If you open this up, you'll see that students are given a series of tasks that they're asked to respond to, and really just to think about this. Well, when they look at a task like building kitchen cabinets, is this something they would like hate, or would it actually, for them, being maybe more hands-on, something they'd really like to do, or develop a new medicine, or write a book or play? Well, maybe they're more ambivalent about something like teaching an exercise routine, etc. So that's essentially how the interest profiler works. Again, this can be a really fun activity for your students to start down the road of self-assessment. And the results are great because once you get through the end of a self-assessment like the interest profiler, the really magical and cool thing that happens, and I'm just kind of speeding through as I talk here, is it's going to match the student to a bunch of occupations that fit those sets of interests, right? And that's really the core idea of the system, is that when you do a self-assessment, that self-assessment should lead you to a set of occupations that are worth exploring. So I hit click summarize. I'm going to learn what my Holland Code top interest areas are, and secondary sets of interest, and then I'm going to view the occupations. And you'll see that the occupations are in orange now because they match to what I clicked in my interest profiler. And remember, anytime you see an occupation listing like this one, you can filter it up here using the blue box, or you can compare occupations by clicking the box next to the occupation. If I click compare selected, that'll pull them up, put them side by side, show me the job zone, which is the amount of preparation required, the cluster it appears in, the interest, work values, etc. All right, so that's a little bit of an idea of how all that works. When we go back to our career hub, you'll see there are more self-assessments that we could talk about, but we're not going to spend too much time on this because there's a lot to cover in today's call. But these can all be really great class activities for your students to build understanding of themselves. The only thing I will point out before we leave this section is the quick assessment is not going to record results. So whereas the other self-assessments, if you do them and you run a report, you'll be able to see what your students' results were. The quick assessment, being a really quick way to basically introduce the idea of self-assessment, is really more designed to, like I said, introduce it. It's not really going to help the student narrow down the list of possibilities for them. So our suggestion on this one is use this as the way you introduce the concept of self-assessment. Allow students to play with it and click different attributes, view the results, see what comes up, then maybe go back and click a different set of results just to see what pulls up when you order it differently, etc. And then now you've sort of built the comfort level with the concept that depending on your interests and how you sort of view yourself, then that's going to match to different occupations. And that's sort of the point that we're trying to hammer home to the students using the system. All right, so the next one, and this is where you'll see a change. In explore industry sectors, we now have more than just exploring industry sectors. Explore industry sectors is still first option. So if I click that, you will see what you probably remember from the site if you had used it previously, which is we now have pulled in all the California industry sectors. You can open up one of these industry sectors and see some top line information about how that particular sector is growing, the annual openings, the recent graduates, the average wage. And students can filter these occupations by highest paying, fastest growing, and most employed. So that's still a really nice way at a top line to understand an industry sector. And as I've said in other calls, the best practice with using industry sectors is a lot of times students will get really zoned in on a particular occupation. So you may be talking to a sophomore, for instance, who says, I want to be a surgeon. Well, that's great, but that's a pretty kind of high level goal. Even though it's a really zoned in statement, I want to be a surgeon, what they're really trying to say is they're excited about medicine. That's really cool. And let's take a look. Let's go into health science and medical technology. Let's look at how many openings are in that area, the recent graduates. And sure, if we look under highest paying, we may very well see surgeons there. We could look at that occupation with the student, but let's expand and open the aperture a bit as well. Let's look at the fastest growing occupations. Let's see that some of those occupations in the fastest growing area don't require quite as much preparation. So if this is a student who says they want to be a surgeon but doesn't necessarily want to go through 12 to 14 years of training to become a surgeon, some of these other options may be better. And you can look at most employed as well. So these are the sorts of conversations we have with students when we're working with them and we're talking, we sort of pull out from them their interests, but we also want to make sure that we're having them think about the sector as a whole, its growth, and its prospects for the future. Okay, so I go back and you'll see now that within the Explore Industry sectors, there are a few more options. There's an Explore Colleges module. We can go directly into Explore Occupation and Explore Fields of Study. Talk about colleges for a second, because in addition to all of the occupation profiles and certification profiles that we have in the system, we also have college profiles in the system. And so I can select individual state and look at the institutions in that state. I can zone it down by zip code and use the filters in those regards. And then I can open up one of the schools as I'm going through here and just take a look at the California College of San Diego and pull up the results for a particular occupation. Computer's being a little futzy right now on me, but let's try this again. Pull up, let's see, Cal Poly as an example. There we go. That one loaded for some reason. All right. So this is going to give you an example of a college profile. We've got everything from the annual tuition, room and board, student body size. We can see our personal reaction to this occupation, to this college profile, is a thumbs up or thumbs down. I could create a journal on the fly about my sort of thoughts or reason I'm interested in that particular profile, whether it's a college or an occupation, and there's a lot more information here. So again, a strength of the Career Zone is just how much data is loaded into all of these profiles, and you really should have your students try to mine these profiles for as much as they possibly can to expand their own understanding of what they're looking at, and then also how they're relating to it and why it matters to them. All right, so we've gone through some of the main changes, and just to kind of summarize what you saw here, there is a kind of an easier dashboard for teachers to bring students under management. There is a new and improved Career Hub page, which is going to make it a little easier to navigate through the system. We expanded Explore Industry sectors with a few more modules there. A couple other things I'll point out in this stuff section, and the students will see this as well. There's a button up here that says I want to. Become familiar with that button, because if I click on that, this is going to give me quick links to activities, everything from the interest profiler, et cetera, but also to the journals I've created. If I've worked on a reference list or started building a resume in the system, it's going to link me to those. My ratings, I can actually go and find a job here. If I've used the course planner, which was a new feature last year, then I can go to my course plan and take a look at that, right? So there's a lot of options that you can do from within the stuff section, and just by clicking the I want to button. So just something to be aware of. And last thing I'll just remind everyone is that there's more to do in the system beyond these three bubbles, right? If I go to explore, you'll see there's options in here that aren't in those bubbles. In decide as well, and then in grow, that's where you're going to see some of the more practical tools, things like building a resume, letter builder, reference list builder, etc. This is also where you'll find the My Classes course planner. So this is something that we added last year. So if I wanted to create a new schedule, I can get started. It's going to give me an on-screen sort of walkthrough of what's going on here with this particular tool. And if I pick if say I'm in eighth grade and I'm starting to plan for high school, what the idea of the course planner is let's align our course planning to our career interests, and that's sort of what we're trying to do here. So I can select from the courses that are listed here, and these are mostly generalized. People who use the upgraded site, we can pull in your specific course offerings, but if you're using the statewide version, you're going to get basically what's an aggregate of all the top courses that are offered throughout the state. Another cool thing about the course planners, if you scroll down, it will show you standards alignment and whether or not the student is meeting the requirements for various things like UC, CSU, and the state mandated requirements in A to G, and you can enter notes for each course, et cetera. So a new feature, we encourage you to explore it. And hopefully use it with your students. Reminder also that you can toggle the whole site to Spanish. That was something we added a couple years back now. At the very bottom, if I click on language, I can switch from English to Spanish. All right, so those are some of the newest and latest features, just everything that I wanted to make sure that you are aware of. And hopefully from there, now we can go deeper into a couple of awesome improvements and things we hope you'll use. So let's begin with our lesson plan functionality. So we've always had the ability to create lessons for free educator accounts in the system. So if I click on lessons, you'll see that we tell you about the improvements that we've made, but you're listening to this webinar, so you don't need to read all of these. And for now, what you're seeing on my screen are lessons that are actually locked and only available to our subscribers. So if you're a free educator account holder, you won't be able to access the locked lessons, the lessons that are available to our subscribers, but you can create a lesson. And if I create a lesson, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to just call this one test lesson, and I'm going to do a lowest suggested grade. Maybe it can be used as young as ninth grade, and we'll take it up to 11th grade, and I'll create the lesson. I won't have the ability to share this lesson with other educators at my school unless I'm in the upgrade, but I can definitely use this one with my students. Here I can edit the information about the lesson or edit the instructions for my students. So if I click here, I'd say, this is probably where I'd say I'd like you to complete this by end of next week, this lesson by end of next week. And then you might describe what you're trying to do with the lesson. So a little bit of slowness with the typing, but here we go, update lesson, and that's going to appear there. Now, this is where the fun part starts. This is with the tasks. So I'm going to click on new task, and I'm going to be able to tell the student that I want them to say, do a text or reflection. So in here, I'd say, reflect on occupations you liked, right? And so I'd ask them to, write a short essay about an occupation. And I'm just writing something just to fill the space. And then I can do a minimum word requirement as well. So this will make it so a student can't just type 4 words and click submit and show the task is completed, right? So I'm able to do that. I can click require notes since this is a written reflection, and I click save task, and now that task has been added. I can say, well, I want all my kids to do the interest profiler. So I'd click on the interest profiler. I'd type in a few words about that task, why I want them to do it. This will help you. I'm just doing this for speed purposes, but obviously we want to write a more detailed description, et cetera, and title. And now I've added the interest profiler task. So if I click task again, you can see there's other tasks I can link to, including the budget and skills profiler. I can link to another page within the site or outside the site if there's a resource I'd like to pull in. And then you'll also see that there are some additional options that are available to subscribers that aren't available to free educator accounts. And we'll get into those momentarily. But now that I've created my lesson, I've got it saved. I've got a couple of tasks in there. And if I go to manage lessons, I'll be able to see the lesson I just created. All right. So it's there. And the last step is okay. Now I've done that. I want to actually assign the lesson. So to do that, I'm going to go to my users. I don't have any users under my management yet. So I'm going to have to actually show you this in the demo, and I'll do that in a moment. But I would be able to assign the lesson to my users from this page by clicking assign this lesson. Now I've got one user under management, and that's myself, right? So I actually can assign the lesson to myself. Click assign, click select the test lesson, assign the lesson, and it'll click OK. And now that lesson has been assigned to the one user I have under management, which is me, and that will appear in my Career Hub. Okay, so that's basically the very short and succinct way to introduce the concept of doing a lesson, creating a lesson and assigning it. You can see now that in my Career Hub, in the stuff, I have the test lesson has been assigned. And there might be a question, how could I be 50% completed on it? Well, one of the two tasks was to do the interest profiler, and you all saw me do that. So since I've completed the interest profiler, that task's already completed. So I'm halfway there. Now the only other thing I'd have to do to finish this lesson is to write a reflection, which was the other task. And once I had completed that particular task, then I would be able to complete the lesson and submit it. Another cool feature that we've added for educators is that now when a student is done with their lesson, they can submit it to their educator. And when they submit it to their educator, the educator is going to have the option to review the lessons that have been submitted by opening this approval queue. Now, when the students have completed this, you'll see that there's going to be a list of assignments that you can go through and approve or send back to the student because you need them to do more work, for example. So that's another feature that has been added in the lesson plan functionality. All right, so that's a big one, and we're putting a lot of emphasis now on lesson plans, and for a big reason. For one thing, it's going to really help you with reporting and standardization. So if you want to basically make sure that all your students are going through the system in a similar way, you want to make sure that their reflections are all kind of all in the same format in the same place. This can be a really nice way to do it. And the other thing that's kind of cool is when you use the lesson plan functionality, you can run a report that actually will show you the status of that particular report, of that particular assignment. So in this case, say I had assigned this lesson to 10 of my students, they'd all be listed here. It shows the date I assigned it, the date it was started, the date it was submitted, the date I approved it, and the tasks completed. So you get a nice reflection there of everything that you need to know about where they are in doing the work. If, for example, you just told them, well, hey, just go do the interest profiler. Well, there'd be a way to check on that as well. You'd run a report and you'd hit dashboard report and you'd see, well, okay, the student or I have done the interest profiler. If I hover over, by the way, that's how you'd see what the acronym stands for. But so there's always other ways, but the lesson plans are a really nice way for you to customize it. And actually also a way for you to integrate activities that are outside of the career zone that you might want students to complete. So example might include, interviewing a parent or a family friend about their career and to write an essay about that or an entry in the system. So that's the kind of thing that we see people use lesson plans for, and something you might want to consider. Okay, so we've done a lot here with sort of the free features of the California Career Zone for educators. And just to make sure everyone sort of heard the clarion call, if you have not signed up for a free educator account, you'll definitely want to do so, because that's going to be how you're going to bring those students under management. You can take up to 50 students under management for free. All right, so now let's hop over to our demo site. and give you an idea of a little more what's happening in the upgrade. All right, so the demo site is showing you basically some of the enhanced features that a manager would have if they were working with the CareerZone upgrade. And the big ones to point out here are that now, in addition to the I want to button, you have a file management button too. Because if you're using an upgraded site, we allow for unlimited file storage. This is going to allow students to upload things like um, college essay drafts, et cetera, and save them in the system. Another thing to point out is, students have their CareerZone accounts for free and for life. That's a really important tenet of our company and what we're doing here. So that includes their files as well. So if you've upgraded your site and they had file management while they were using your upgraded site, they're going to retain file management even after they graduate or go to a different school, et cetera. So just something to be aware of. So that little disk icon is one of the new things that you'll see in the upgraded site, and something else that you can do with the system. The other place that you'll see some improvements from a upgrade standpoint is in lessons. So if I go to lessons now and I go through the on-screen tutorials, just click through here, you'll see that there are some more options now from the standpoint of tasks. So if I go to, let's do the intro. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna create a lesson from scratch just to show you what this would look like. So if I go to, I'll do a test lesson here, and let's just do 7th grade to 12th. And this time we can share the lesson that we create with other educators at our school. So I'll create the lesson. I am going to skip doing the introduction for now just to show you this. So now here I am. I'm in the edit task mode. And whereas before I could only do up to link, now I can include a survey. I can ask students to download a file. I can link to videos, or I could ask students to submit work. So these are different kinds of tasks that you have access to if you're using the upgraded site and what we call a premium educator account versus the free educator account. So some more options here. So for example, let's do a download file task. I'll say, read this file. What I would do here is I would, I'm going to make sure you review this. All right. And now that I've done that, I'm going to click the file that I want the students to download. I'll click this particular PDF. I'll have them save the task. Okay. And this is going to now make it so when the student opens up this particular lesson, or they're assigned this particular lesson, they're going to be able to access that file. That can also be helpful if you're using the upgraded site and you're an administrator wanting to make sure that all of your teachers review something, or all the teachers that are working within that same system. We've seen it used in that regard too. So that's just something to be aware of, and something that can be helpful on the file management side. File management, like I said, it's something we can't offer statewide for a number of reasons, but we can offer it in these more localized contexts, and it allows us to do a ton more. So another thing to point out about file management is that a student can upload their own files to the site. That's always possible. So I could choose a file and pick out, do that same one, and that would be uploaded to the site, no problem. But you can also upload a file on a student's behalf. Another thing that's pretty cool is if a student uploads a file that, say, is to you a really critical file. Maybe it is a college essay draft or something like that, and you just want to avoid any possibility that that student might mistakenly delete it or pull it out of there, whatever. You can add a tag to it. We'll call this college essay tag, right? And if I add a tag to a particular file, and I'm not sure why that isn't going through, but I would add a tag to a particular file, and that would make it so the file can't be deleted. It's probably because I'm in the actual manager account right now. But in any case, that's going to be an important thing to do for two reasons. One is if you tag a particular file, That's going to keep the student from deleting it, but it's also going to allow you to run reports on the files that have been saved by students. So a use case there would be if, say, I have 25 students, I've asked them to all write a college essay draft, and I want to run a report to see how many students have uploaded a file that I've tagged as college essay. I would click run a report. I'd go to tagging report, and I would see all the files that have been tagged under with that particular tag. So we haven't really built it out here in this demo, but you'd be able to see it in that particular report. Okay, so a couple other things that you'll want to take note of for the upgrade is that now you actually have access to the locked lessons. There are a number of lessons that are in the site that are preloaded for you that you could use with topics ranging from being an entrepreneur to actually just going through and finding your interests, etc. So there are lessons that you can already use. You can also use those as a jumping off point for yourself. You can copy the lesson and then make edits to that lesson and then use your edited version with students. So a little more capability and functionality there in the context of the upgrade. I'm going to log out of my manager account here within the upgrade demo and finish up on a couple of the core points with what the admin of the site sees and what they can do, because we do have some of our subscribers on the call today. And I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of a few kind of important features. One nice thing that you can do when we're managing users inside of an upgrade site is that we can group them. And there are a number of ways to create groups. If you want to create them all sort of at the outset, once your site has been deployed, you'd click import users, you'd click group assignments. There's a template that you use for putting all your student names and assignments on a CSV, and then you upload it. You can do it basically all in one shot. But there also is a way to add an individual student to a group on the fly. So let's use the example of Willie here and say, all right, I've got him in group 9 and group 18, but he really should be a member of group 4 as well. Okay, now he's in group 4. Or maybe I want to create a new group. We'll call this new group, all right? So I can just type it right in line with that student, and I would be able to add them to a group. What's cool about that is now if I type in the search bar here, group 18, I'll be able to pull up just the students in that particular cohort and run a report on them. If I click on dashboard report, I can see what activities the students in that cohort have completed. I can export this data to CSV or XLS or make it a PDF as well. So if I'm looking across an entire school or district, the ability to do that grouping and run reports for those groups is really helpful. It's also helpful too from the standpoint of assigning lessons, because here for the 25 users I've selected in group 18, I can assign a lesson, versus if I close that and I assign a lesson, it would be to all 531. All right, so that filtering mechanism and grouping can be helpful. One thing to point out to our subscribers on the call today is we do see a lot of you create groups for graduation years. You may not have to do that because we have a default filter here that allows you to select class year and then pull up just the students who are part of that particular graduation year. The other thing to point out is if you are going to do a message to individual users, it's going to send to the ones who you've selected. So, if I type in just, say, Albert here, and I want to send a message just to him, I can do that. I could do it like this, or I could click on Actions and send a message from the Actions button there. If I want to send a message to, all the students in group 9, I would pull up group 9. Now it says for the 3 users there, send a message, test, and then that message is going to go out to the users in that particular group and will appear in their Career Hub. Okay, so that's a little bit about how grouping and messaging works. But when you create a group, then everything that you do from that point on is for that particular group or subsegment of students. If I'm working with an individual student and I want to see, for example, what San has done in the system, I can click on the Actions button, click View Profile Report, and then I get a really comprehensive look at everything the student has done inside the system. The other thing that's cool here is I can see where they are in the lesson plans that they've been assigned, what progress they've made, what journals they've written, the budget results, and then the files that they've stored are going to be there as well. I promised and mentioned before that I could upload a file on behalf of a student, and I can do that here. So if I click on San's name and go to Manage Files, I could choose a file. I will go to my demo files here, and let's just create, we'll do Jason's Career Dream. We'll open up that one. All right, so that's in there now. And I can edit the name of the file. If I didn't like the name of the file, I could change it. That's one thing I could do. I could delete it, and I could also add a tag. Let's see if it works this time. Yeah, let's see, essay. All right, and then click on essay. And so now this particular file has a tag, and that tag is essay. So when San goes to his file management, now he's going to see the file that I uploaded on his behalf. It's not like I'm the only one who sees it. He sees it too, but he's not going to be able to delete it because I've tagged it with the tag essay. And now if I run the report, as I was trying to show you before, if I click on tagging report, I can see that there is one total file. None of them are untagged because I did tag Sans. And if I wanted to use the filter to see who's has a file that's tagged with the essay tag, well, one student is, that's San. There's the tag essay, and you see one. All right, so that's basically how that all works. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this particular call, but in the last sort of 10 minutes or so before Q&A, I want to sort of point to two special and important things for all of you to consider. The first is something that you may already know about, that we mentioned and I've talked about in previous calls, but it's the concept of local opportunities. One of the really cool things that you can do inside of an upgrade is you can pull in local profiles for companies and community organizations, et cetera, to promote to your individual students. And why you would do something like that? Well, if you're in CTE or you're trying to get students involved in work-based learning, or you just want students to know what sorts of opportunities are near to your school or district, this can be a really nice way to promote it. We always like to point to what we consider the best in class example right now of this, which is what they're doing up in Humboldt County. You can see this is a Humboldt County-wide deployment. Their site looks very similar to the state site, but it says for Humboldt County, and that's what happens with the upgrades. And now you can see in below the main doors of the site, they also have this local opportunities option. Now these are profiles, over 183 total profiles of local businesses and organizations that offer local opportunities to students in Humboldt County. So I can filter it by the type of involvement I'm interested in. So if I'm interested in job shadowing, I can click filter, and I can see all of the organizations that offer job shadowing opportunities. I can filter it by sector or location, right? So it starts with those filters, which is really helpful and nice. But the coolest thing, I think, by far is the fact that if you open up a particular profile and you look at, say, we're going to use LACO because I always like to use LACO, and I pull this one up and I learn about this particular business, I can see the occupations they employ. And I can click on one of those, civil engineers, and that links to one of the occupation profiles in the CareerZone. Now that can be really interesting for a student in Humboldt County who went through the interest profiler and the work importance profiler and landed on civil engineering and said, this is really cool, I want to do this. And they gave it a thumbs up, and they're happy with all that. And now they want to figure out, okay, what are the opportunities? Where would I get educated to become a civil engineer? What certifications are available? What jobs, et cetera? But if I click on companies, I can actually see that there are 3 companies in my area that offer some kind of a local opportunity that I could get involved in. It really brings it down to earth, and it lets the student know, hey, there actually is an entry point for you to begin this pathway, to begin and get onto the road to becoming a civil engineer. And you'll want to click on that and open up the profile and learn more about what's being offered. Okay, so really cool feature of the system. something that we encourage certainly counties to look at, larger districts to look at, and it gets even stronger the more partnership and collaboration that happens. So that'd be something that some of you may be interested in. And the last and most important new announcement of the day is that we're bringing to California a system that has been in place in Pennsylvania in our other career zone. We've got a Pennsylvania career zone that's very similar to California, only they've had for a couple of years a system for their elementary students called Up the Ladder. And we're making Up the Ladder available to subscribers in California right now. So if you're interested in this, in particular for upper elementary, we recommend it really for grades 3, 4, 5. But this is a system within the system. You find it within Discover Possibilities. You click on Up the Ladder, and your younger students are going to get access to a totally different kind of approach to career readiness and literacy. They basically enter a game format, and they're introduced to Kathy. Everything on the screen can be read back to them by hitting the play button. And they kind of enter the world of work by, creating a work badge. And, they're going to put in, they're going to create a badge for themselves. And here we are. And we're going to click on Save Your ID. And we're going to learn a little bit about what's going on in the game. The bottom line for anyone who's interested in this is the students really being rewarded for exploration and for engaging the system. They see this game board, they can click on, say, a random cluster and look at one of these particular career clusters around the board. When that opens up, they can watch a short video about that cluster. These are usually about 30 seconds long. They can read about the activities or have read out to them the activities of that particular job, the popularity. They can start looking at pathways. They can really start playing with what it means to be in the world of work. They may not understand all of it, but it's a really nice way to introduce career literacy at the younger levels. We have a younger version of the interest profiler, which allows students to kind of visually compare occupations as opposed to having to react to tasks. So as they go through that, they're going to just basically have gut reactions to the image they see on the screen. And then just like in the interest profiler in the regular career zone, that's going to match them to certain pathways that they can learn about. And they click on that. And as they look at something, they get rewarded with badges for the exploration they're doing. If they like a pathway, they're going to get a badge for that, etc. The fun thing is they're gradually moving up the ladder. They start as an intern, and the first promotion is to associate. And if that student is wondering how to get promoted to associate, they click on the ladder and they can see that what they need to do is complete the interest activity, but they have to view 5 pathways and like 3 pathways, and then they're going to make it to associate, and then manager, and then boss. And more activities are made available to them the more they explore and the more they do inside of the system. So that's really just a quick introduction to Up the Ladder. But for any of you who are interested in this and maybe bringing Up the Ladder into your upper elementary programs, reach out to us and let us know, because this is going to be part of the upgrade going into the next, within this academic year and beyond. And we're excited to bring it to California and see what you all think of it. One of the special offers that we'll make is if you're a dedicated elementary program that's listening to this call, if you sign up and do this upgrade and want to bring Up the Ladder to your school, we'll give it to you for free for the remainder of this academic year. And then we'll have the subscription kick in for the next academic year. So you have to pay for the subscription, but you're really paying for the 2020-2021 subscription and getting the remainder of this year at no cost. So it's basically getting a year and a half for the price of one. So it's something we can talk about in more detail if you reach out to us and are curious to learn more. Okay, so I'm coming sort of to the end of my section of this. I want to point out a few important resources because one of the questions many of you may have is, okay, we talked about the upgrades, but what's the pricing look like? If you go to headed2.com/CA, you're going to get a full summary of all the options and features of the upgrade that we talked about. We'll be updating the webinar that's on the screen with today's webinar, so you won't need to watch that if you watched this already. And then if you click on pricing, you'll actually get an idea of what's going on here. So let me walk everyone through the options. First things first, for an individual, okay, there's the Headed To account, which is our regular account. That's what your students sign up for. That's what you sign up for originally when you sign in. That's always free, okay? The educator account is free in California, where you can manage up to 50 students, and you just submit your request for a free educator account. We grant that. You are then able to bring those students under management. You can run basic reports, assign lessons that you create, etc. If you as an individual teacher are interested in the upgrade features, but your school is not going to be doing a school-wide upgrade, you can do so. That's a new feature. That's something we haven't had in the past. And so you can do that for an individual teacher for the cost of $89 an academic year. That'll allow you to manage up to 175 students. You can access our preloaded lesson plans. You can get unlimited file storage and reporting for your students, the enhanced lesson plan functionality, and enhanced reports. So the Premium Educator account is a big change for this year. We hadn't offered that in the past, but it's something that you can do. And our hope is that the more you can see and do within the system, the more excited you'll get, and you'll spread the word and get more people involved. Now, if we're talking about groups, or we're talking about, say, school-wide or an individual program, these are the pricing options there. So first thing I'll point out is a program upgrade. That's our lowest level upgrade from the standpoint of a program. That's where you're bringing up to 500 students under management. You have 5 Premium Educator accounts included in that. There's your cost for the academic year. It's $350 for an academic year. There you'll get a unique URL, the ability to bulk upload students and groups, and share lesson plans. The basic upgrade, our regular upgrade for a school, is going to be $3 per student, and it includes all the features that are listed here, and we went through many of them in today's call. One I didn't think I mentioned was single sign-on. So you can do single sign-on with Google and with MS365 or Clever. And then the last, we call it enhanced, and there's a minimum of 2,500 students there, but when you do that, if that's a larger school or district, we can actually sync with Aries and help with rostering. Aries or Power Schools or other SIS is what we mentioned here. So with both the basic and enhanced upgrade, we do offer 1 hour of free professional development via a webinar, and additional professional development is available too. So where you found that was on headed2.com/CA, and then you clicked on pricing up at the top. And if you're interested in getting a quote, click get a quote. And if you click on get a quote, please do mention, especially if you're one of the elementary attendees today who's interested in up the ladder, just mention that you attended the call and that you're interested in the offer about up the ladder, and we can get into more detail about how to make that work for you. Okay, so I have covered quite a bit, and I want to see and make sure that there aren't any other questions in the Q&A. Why don't I just take a look at that? I'll open it up, and let's see if I can get to the screen. All right. Okay, yes. So I see 2 questions. First question that I saw was about getting a copy of the recording. Everybody who attends today's call will get a copy of the recording, so don't worry about that. And the second question I saw was a question about journals and being able to assign or use journals. There's actually kind of a cool thing you can do with journals. So I'm going to go back to my account here and show that if you are, if you're looking at a particular, actually, let me use a different example. If I'm doing a task for something I've been asked to do, a written reflection, for example, And in that written reflection, I know I'm being asked to write a written reflection, say about an occupation I like, but I already created a journal about it. Say, for instance, I'd been instructed by my teacher a week before to, find an occupation I like and write a journal about it. And then I get this lesson that says, write a reflection about it. Well, I've already done it. So what we allow you to do is you can import your journal entry. So instead of having to write it all out or even copy and paste, you can import a journal entry that you've assigned before. So what I would suggest for that particular question is to ask the student to either write a new one or import a journal entry and make that the task. So just be aware that you can do that. Then okay, so I'm just going to make sure I'm not missing anything else. Um, okay, so in terms of setting up, there's a question that I've been asked about sort of setting up teachers. What I would suggest is let's definitely start with the free version. If you're going to be using the Career Zone at your school and you want to just make sure all your teachers have access, I would be sure to make sure you share the link with everyone, which is cacareerzone.org. Ask them all to create an account, to designate when they're doing registration that they are a teacher or a counselor. Okay, so that's important. So make sure that they do that. And then once they do that, then they'll see an option to sign up for a free educator account. And I would instruct them to do so. So that's kind of the workflow for if you're using the free site in the school and you want to make sure that they're able to do it. If you're going to do this in the upgrade context, you upgrade the site, probably the suggestion we would make is that you upload your teachers first and give them the access to the site that allows them to manage students. So everyone in an upgrade site who just signs in using, say, sign in with Google is going to default to being a student user, right? So for example, let's go back to Willie. We used that one before. Willie may actually be a teacher. Let's pretend like Willie's a teacher. But that was the first time Willie ever signed into the upgrade site. So he defaulted to being a student. And so Willie goes back and he sees, I don't have a management toolbar. What's going on? Well, the admin would have to change his access by clicking on Actions, Edit User, and then at the top of their screen here, they'll see the ability to change access from user to administrator or manager, et cetera. So that's how you would change that if you had to do it. But that's why we suggest if you upload the teachers and just give them the assigned access, then that won't happen. And the first time they log in, they'll already have the manager access that they're working for. Okay. Let me see if there's any other questions in the Q&A. There are. Okay. So if you want to share any kind of a lesson plan, there's a question about at what level, can you do a shared lesson plan? Shared lesson plans are at the upgrade level. So a premium educator account would be able to share a lesson with another premium educator account in the system. So if you're part of that or a program account or a basic upgrade, you're going to be able to share lessons. You can't share a lesson if you're just in the free site, but you can create your own lessons if you're in the free site. Let me keep reading through these. Okay, so yeah, there's a question about uploading or adding local opportunities, and I'm glad that question is asked because I actually want to see if I can point to a new feature that we've made that's going to make this a little bit easier for folks. So I'm going to go to I'm in my admin account here in the demo. I go to manage, and you'll see under data maintenance in the upgrade, you'll see manage local opportunities. Okay, now within this, I'm going to have the option to create a profile on behalf of the company or organization. That's what we used to have. The only problem with that is if you knew that you had 100 of these to make, that would be a little bit cumbersome. The other option, this is the new thing we've done, is we've created an intake form. So you click on share intake form, you copy this link, and you send via email that link to your contacts at the companies or community organizations. What they do then is they fill in some basic information from a URL and a couple other details. And that's going to at least set up basically the framework for a profile. They'll also be able to add some of their basic information in terms of like the local opportunities that they're going to be offering. So they create basically the roots or the foundation of the profile, and it's already built. And then they submit it to you being the central administrator of the site, the admin. It is not published to the students until you agree to publish it to the students. So in this example, Headed To was sent that link. They filled in the information. I've got a profile. I reviewed the profile. I like what they've done. It's okay for my kids to see it. So now I'd click the published checkbox. If I was in the correct account, I'd be able to do that, and it would be published out to my students in the listing. So it depends on a central administrator approving the profile, but now instead of you having to create the profile for them, they can actually do a lot of the work on their own, and then you basically go into a process of being the approver of it. All right, going back to questions. All right. So there's a question about Google Drive and uploading from a Google Drive. The way the file upload systems work, if you had a file in Google Drive, you would have to download it and then upload it. And the quick explanation for why that is Google Drive allows for files to be updated on the fly. And in many cases, what we want is a snapshot in time of a file. We don't want it to be updated in real time. So the requirement is it basically you have to download from Google Drive and then upload it. It's not synced with Google Drive. For free educator accounts, yes, you can manage up to 50 students per school per academic year. And if you want to change the students, you're able to actually do that in managing groups and take students out as you add new ones in. And then let's see what time we have right now. We're just about at time. So I may have to take some of these other questions offline, but let me give you some contact information so that folks can reach out to me directly, and I'm happy to answer additional questions. My email address is blair@headed2.com. And like I said, feel free to reach out to us with other questions that you may have, and I'll be happy to begin to answer those, or someone from our team will. We really appreciate your time today and your attention. Like I said, the recording will be sent out, and if you have anything else you need, just let us know. Thank you for using the California Career Zone, and thank you again for attending today's webinar.